The ventilation shaft above the Galactic Council chamber carried voices like a metal tunnel, and Danny Ross heard every word while he tightened the loose bolts on a rattling air filter. He had been working maintenance on the orbital station for 3 years now, and he had learned that the best gossip came from places nobody thought to look up. Today, though the voices below weren't gossiping, they were panicking. Danny paused, wrench in hand, and peered through the grating. The massive council chamber stretched out beneath him, filled with representatives from 40 different species. At the center stood someone who made everyone else look small, even though she wasn't particularly tall. Queen Isareth of the Varanthi Empire wore armor that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and even from his hiding spot, Danny could see it was something special. The Varanthi were an old species. Not just old like humans counted age, but ancient in a way that made other aliens nervous. They had been crossing the stars when most species were still figuring out fire. Their technology was legendary, and the armor their queen wore was the most legendary piece of all. Danny had read about it in the station database during a slow shift. The radiant armor of Cathera, 10,000 years old, never damaged, never defeated. It generated a shield that could stop anything from bullets to plasma to gravitational weapons. The Varanthi considered it sacred, a gift from their ancestors, proof that their empire was blessed by the universe itself. Right now, though, the blessed armor was dying. The shield flickered like a bad light bulb, pulsing weakly around Queen Isareth before disappearing entirely, the chamber filled with shocked gasps and urgent chittering from a dozen different species. Danny watched as Varanthi advisors rushed forward, their insect-like faces twisted in what he had learned to recognize as extreme distress. A tall Varanthi in elaborate robes, probably some kind of priest, was speaking in a booming voice that carried even to Danny's perch. The station's translation implant in Danny's ear converted the clicks and whistles into English. The sacred armor has entered its rest phase. This is unprecedented. The negotiations cannot continue while our queen stands exposed to danger. Varanthi law is absolute on this matter. A squat, blue-skinned council mediator stepped forward, multiple arms gesturing frantically. But the peace treaty must be signed today. If we delay, the border conflicts will escalate. Thousands of lives are at stake. Then thousands will die, the priest said coldly. The law cannot bend. Danny knew enough about galactic politics to understand what was happening. The Varanthi Empire and the neighboring Krell Dominion had been fighting skirmishes along their border for months. This treaty was supposed to stop it. Without the treaty, the skirmishes would turn into a real war. And when old empires went to war, entire planets became casualties. Below, Varanthi engineers had surrounded the queen, scanning the armor with devices that hummed and beeped. Danny could see their body language even if he couldn't read their expressions. They were confused and frightened. One of them spoke to the priest. "Holy One, we cannot determine the cause. The armor's systems are beyond our comprehension. We have never needed to understand them before." "Then perform the sacred maintenance rituals," the priest commanded. "We have, Holy One." 3 times. The armor does not respond. The priest's mandibles clacked together in agitation. "Then we must return home. The armor must be taken to the Grand Cathedral where the high rituals can be performed. This audience is over." Queen Isareth, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was surprisingly gentle for a warrior queen. "How long will the high rituals take?" The priest hesitated. 40 days, Your Majesty. Perhaps more." 40 days. The queen looked at the council mediator. "You said thousands of lives are at stake. How many will die in 40 days? The mediator's skin flushed a darker blue. Estimates suggest between 5,000 and 8,000 casualties if hostilities continue unchecked. Danny had stopped pretending to work. He was staring at the armor, his mind racing. From his angle, he could see the back panel where various components connected to the main body. Something about the way the energy was flickering seemed familiar. He had seen that pattern before, on the station's old power regulators before they failed completely. He should stay quiet. This wasn't his business. He was a maintenance tech, not a diplomat or a soldier. He fixed air filters and recycling systems and occasionally unclogged toilets on the alien species deck, which was always an adventure. But 8,000 people would die. And that armor wasn't magic. It couldn't be. Nothing was magic. Everything was just engineering, and engineering could be fixed. Danny made a decision that was either very brave or very stupid. He loosened the grating, swung his legs through, and dropped 12 feet to the polished floor below. The chamber went silent. 40 species worth of eyes, stalks, sensors, and other visual organs turned to stare at the human in a maintenance jumpsuit who had just fallen from the ceiling. Danny stood up, brushed dust off his knees, and walked toward Queen Isareth. Security guards from 3 different species moved to intercept him, but he spoke quickly, his voice carrying in the stunned silence. "I can fix that." The Varanthi priest made a sound like a boiling kettle. "Sacrilege. How dare a human, a primitive newcomer species, suggest touching the sacred armor?" Danny ignored him and looked directly at Queen Isareth. "Your Majesty, with respect, that armor isn't sacred. It's a machine. A really good machine. Maybe the best I've ever seen, but still a machine. And machines break down. They need maintenance. I think I can fix it." The Queen studied him with large, multifaceted eyes that reflected his image dozens of times. "You are a maintenance worker on this station?" "Yes, ma'am." "Danny Ross, I fix things. It's what I do." "The armor is 10,000 years old. It was built by our ancestors using techniques lost to time. Our finest engineers cannot repair it." "Maybe that's the problem," Danny said. "No offense, but your engineers aren't trying to fix it. They're trying to worship it. There's a difference." The priest lunged forward, but guards held him back. He was shouting now. "Execute this human for his blasphemy. He insults our most sacred relic." Queen Isareth raised one hand and the priest fell silent. She continued to study Danny with those inscrutable compound eyes. Finally she spoke. "You believe you can succeed where our finest minds have failed?" "I don't know if I'll succeed," Danny admitted, "but I know I won't solve anything by praying at it. Let me look at it 1 hour. If I can't figure out what's wrong in 1 hour, I'll walk away and never mention it again." The chamber erupted in argument. The council mediator was trying to calm everyone down. The priest was demanding Danny's immediate execution. Various alien delegates were shouting opinions in languages the translator couldn't keep up with. Through it all, Queen Isareth stood perfectly still, watching Danny with those reflecting eyes. Then she smiled, which on a Varanthi looked terrifying, and spoke words that would change everything. 1 hour. But know this, human. If you damage the armor, my priest is correct. The penalty is death. Danny swallowed hard and nodded. Understood. Can someone get me my toolkit from Maintenance Locker 17? Danny's toolkit arrived carried by a nervous station security officer who looked at him like he was already dead. The battered metal case contained nothing fancy, just the tools any decent technician would carry. Multimeters, sonic screwdrivers, diagnostic sensors, a tablet loaded with technical databases, and a whole lot of improvisation born from 3 years of keeping alien technology running on a budget. Queen Isareth had moved to a raised platform where everyone could see. The armor covered her from neck to toe, still flickering weakly every few seconds like a heartbeat that couldn't quite sustain itself. She stood perfectly still, patient as stone, while Danny set up his workspace around her. "I need to ask you some questions," Danny said, connecting a sensor to his tablet. "When did the flickering start?" The priest answered before the queen could speak. "The sacred armor does not flicker. It entered a state of divine rest, which is completely different from your crude mechanical failures." "Right." Danny kept his voice neutral. "When did the divine rest start?" "During the approach to this station. 3 hours ago." Danny made a note on his tablet. "Has this ever happened before?" "Never," the priest said firmly. "The armor is eternal and perfect." "When was it last serviced?" The priest's mandibles clicked together in confusion. "Serviced?" "Maintained. Checked over. Cleaned. Repaired. The armor requires no such mundane attentions. It is sustained by the faith of our people and the power of our ancestors." Danny looked at Queen Isareth. "Your Majesty, I need a real answer. When was the last time someone actually looked inside this armor to check if everything was working properly?" The queen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I do not know. The sacred texts speak of rituals performed annually, but they involve prayers and offerings, not physical inspection. The armor has functioned flawlessly for 10,000 years. We saw no reason to disturb it." 10,000 years, Danny repeated. He walked around the queen, examining the armor from all angles. The craftsmanship was incredible. The surface looked seamless, but he could see faint lines where panels met, designed to be opened. He could also see scorch marks, tiny scratches, and where patterns that told stories of ancient battles. He pointed to the back panel. "Your Majesty, I need to remove this section to see what's inside. Is that acceptable?" The priest made that boiling kettle sound again. "Unacceptable. No one has opened the sacred armor in living memory. This human will defile it with his primitive tools and ignorant hands." "Holy One," the Queen said quietly, 8,000 people will die if this treaty is not signed. I find that more defiling than a maintenance inspection. But the law protects me. It does not require others to die for my protection." She looked at Danny. "Proceed." Danny pulled out a scanner and ran it over the back panel seams. The tablet displayed results that made him frown. "The good news is the panel is designed to be removed. See these connection points? They're meant to be opened. Whoever built this intended for it to be serviced." He selected a tool from his kit, adjusting it to match the connector pattern. "The bad news is they've been sealed shut by something that looks like corrosion. When's the last time this armor was in a humid environment? The holy temple on our homeworld maintains sacred moisture level," the priest said stiffly. "The humidity represents the tears of our ancestors." "How humid are we talking?" 93%. Danny winced. "For 10,000 years? Yeah, that'll do it." He worked carefully, breaking the corrosion seal without damaging the panel. "Humidity is fine for people, but metal and electronics don't like it much. Even fancy alien metal and electronics." The panel came free with a soft click. Danny set it aside and shone a light into the opening. What he saw made him let out a low whistle. "Oh, wow. What is it?" The Queen tried to turn her head to see. "It's beautiful," Danny said honestly. "Whoever designed this was a genius. Look at this power distribution network, and these crystalline capacitors, they're growing right out of the structural framework. This isn't just technology, it's art." He pointed to different components and his tablet captured images. "But see here? This crystal has a hairline fracture, and these connection nodes are corroded. And look at these channels. They're supposed to circulate coolant, but they're clogged with mineral deposits." The Varanthi engineers had crowded closer, their translator implants working overtime. One of them spoke up. "But the sacred texts say the armor is self-sustaining. It requires no coolant." "It doesn't require you to add coolant," Danny corrected. "It has a closed-loop system that recycles it, but the system needs to be clean to work. When these channels clog up, the whole thing overheats. That causes expansion. Expansion causes stress fractures in components that are supposed to be solid." He indicated the cracked crystal, like this one. He ran more scans, comparing results to his database. The tablet beeped with findings. "Okay, here's what I think happened. The armor has been slowly degrading for centuries, maybe longer, but it was built so well that it compensated automatically. The damaged crystal was still working, just not at full capacity. The clogged coolant channels meant it ran hotter, but not hot enough to fail completely." "Until?" the Queen prompted. "Until you came to this station. Space stations run cooler than planets and definitely cooler than a 93% humidity temple. The temperature drop was the last straw. The already stressed crystal couldn't handle the thermal contraction. It fractured completely and the whole power distribution network went down." The priest was shaking his head. "Impossible. The armor is blessed. It cannot fail for such mundane reasons." "It's not failing," Danny said. "It's breaking down because nobody's been taking care of it. That's not the armor's fault. That's your fault." The chamber went deadly silent. Danny realized he might have pushed too far, but he was committed now. "Look," he said, softening his tone. "Your ancestors built something amazing. But they built it to be maintained. See these access panels? These diagnostic ports? These are maintenance features. Your ancestors knew that even perfect machines need care." He pulled up a schematic on his tablet, comparing it to what he was seeing. "I've been studying alien technology for years. I've seen patterns. When a civilization builds something meant to last forever, they always include maintenance protocols. Always. The problem isn't that the armor failed. The problem is that somewhere along the way, maintenance became ritual. And ritual became religion, and religion said the armor was too holy to touch. Queen Isareth was very still. You are saying we forgot how to care for our own heritage. I'm saying your ancestors were engineers. Really, really good engineers. But their descendants became priests instead of technicians. No disrespect meant, but prayers don't clean coolant channels. One of the Varanthi engineers spoke up, his voice uncertain. Can you repair it? Danny looked at the fractured crystal, the corroded connections, the clogged channels. He thought about the jury-rigged fixes he had done on the station, the impossible repairs he had pulled off with spare parts and determination. Yeah, he said finally. I can fix it. I'll need some parts and it'll take more than an hour, but I can fix it. The priest stepped forward. And if you fail? If you damage the armor beyond repair? Danny met his eyes. Then you can execute me. But if I don't try, 8,000 people die anyway. I'll take my chances with the armor. Queen Isareth reached up and removed her helmet, revealing a face that was surprisingly expressive despite its alien features. She looked tired and old and sad. My ancestors built this armor, she said quietly. They built it with their hands and their minds, using knowledge they earned through study and practice. When did we decide that made them gods instead of engineers? Nobody answered. She looked at Danny. Fix it. Take as long as you need. And afterward, perhaps you can teach us to care for it properly. Danny nodded and got to work, very aware that his life now depended on understanding technology built 10,000 years before humans had even invented writing. The parts Danny needed arrived within 20 minutes, rushed from the station's engineering supplies and various merchant ships docked in the bay. He had asked for simple things: replacement crystals of various sizes, micro-bonding compound, synthetic coolant rated for extreme temperatures, cleaning solution, and fine brushes. The quartermaster had looked at the list like Danny was planning to clean a bathroom instead of repairing the most sacred relic of a galactic empire. The council chamber had been transformed into a workshop. Danny had requested better lighting, and now portable lamps surrounded Queen Isareth's platform, making the armor glow. Cameras from 24 news services were recording everything. Apparently word had spread fast, and the entire galaxy was now watching a human maintenance tech either save the day or die trying. Danny tried not to think about the audience. He focused on the armor, treating it like he treated every repair job, with respect for the craft and careful attention to detail. First step is cleaning, he explained, partly for the Varanthi engineers watching and partly to calm his own nerves. These coolant channels are clogged with mineral deposits from thousands of years of that humid temple environment. We need to clear them before we do anything else. He mixed the cleaning solution according to specifications, then used a slim probe to inject it into the channels. This will dissolve the deposits without damaging the channel walls. We'll let it sit for 10 minutes. While the solution worked, Danny turned his attention to the corroded connection nodes. There were 12 of them, each one linking a major component to the power distribution network. He examined them carefully with a magnification tool. These were sealed with some kind of conductive compound, he said. Really good stuff, actually. It's lasted 10,000 years, but corrosion got under the seal. He used a fine brush to gently clean away the corrosion, working with steady hands. The trick is to remove the corrosion without damaging the underlying contact points. A Varanthi engineer leaned closer. How did you learn to do this? Practice, Danny said. I've been taking things apart since I was 6 years old. Drove my parents crazy. I'd fix the toaster, break the coffee maker, fix it again, then move on to something else. He smiled at the memory. My dad used to say I couldn't leave well enough alone. My mom said I had curious hands. But this technology is alien to you. Unknown. All technology is the same at its core, Danny said. You've got power sources, distribution networks, functional components, and control systems. The details change, but the principles don't. Electricity is electricity, whether it's running through human circuits or Varanthi crystals. He flushed the cleaning solution from the coolant channels, and dark gritty liquid drained into a collection pan. He repeated the process 3 times until the liquid ran clear. There we go. Clean channels. Now the coolant can actually flow. The main problem was the fractured crystal. Danny examined it from every angle, comparing it to the replacement crystals he had been given. The original was a deep blue color, shot through with veins of silver that seemed to pulse faintly even though the crystal was cracked. This is the tricky part, he admitted. This crystal is the primary power capacitor. It stores energy and regulates the flow to the shield generators. Without it working properly, the whole system fails. The priest, who had been watching in disapproving silence, spoke up. That crystal was blessed by the High Council of Engineers 2,000 years ago. It cannot be replaced. 2,000 years ago? Danny looked up. So it has been replaced before. The priest's mandibles clicked in irritation. That was different. The old crystal had. The previous crystal experienced divine transcendence. It broke, Danny translated. It transcended its physical form. It broke, Danny repeated firmly, and someone fixed it. Which means I can fix it too. He selected a replacement crystal from his supplies, one that matched the size and power rating of the original. This won't be identical. I don't have access to your original manufacturing techniques, but it'll work. Maybe even better, since this one is new and undamaged. The actual replacement required extreme precision. Danny had to disconnect the fractured crystal from dozens of micro-connections without damaging them, then install the new crystal in exactly the right position. He worked slowly, checking each connection twice before moving to the next. Sweat dripped down his face. His hands were steady, but his heart was pounding. One mistake could fry the entire power network. One slip could destroy what had taken 10,000 years to build. The Varanthi engineers watched in absolute silence. Some of them were making notes. Others just stared. Witnessing something they had been taught was impossible. The hard part about working with really old technology, Danny said, his voice quiet with concentration, is that you have to respect both what it is and what it was meant to be. The people who built this knew things we've forgotten, but they also lived in a different time. They made design choices based on what they had available. He carefully seated the new crystal into its mounting. This new crystal is actually more efficient than the original. Material science has improved a lot in 10,000 years, even for Varanthi, but I have to calibrate it to match the rest of the system, or it won't integrate properly. Using his tablet, he ran diagnostic after diagnostic, adjusting the crystal's resonance frequency until it matched the power signature of the surrounding components. It was delicate work, like tuning a musical instrument while it was being played. Finally, after an hour of adjustments, the readings stabilized. That's it. The crystal is installed and calibrated. He moved to the corroded connections next, applying fresh conductive compound to each one. This compound isn't as fancy as whatever your ancestors used, but it'll work. You'll need to check these connections every few years and reapply as needed. Maintenance, Queenie Sareth said softly. You are describing a maintenance schedule. Yes, Your Majesty. Everything needs maintenance. The better something is built, the less maintenance it needs, but nothing is maintenance-free. Your ancestors built this armor to last forever, but only if someone took care of it. Danny worked through his checklist methodically. He replaced worn seals, cleared blocked sensors, recalibrated the power distribution network, and filled the coolant system with fresh synthetic fluid. Each task was simple on its own, but together they formed a complete restoration. The Varanthi engineers asked questions constantly. How did he know which seal to replace? Why did he choose that particular coolant viscosity? What did those diagnostic readings mean? Danny answered everything, sharing knowledge freely. The scorch marks on this seal tell you it's been running hot. See how the material is degraded here? That's thermal breakdown. You replace it before it fails completely. 4 hours after he started, Danny closed the back panel and secured it in place. The armor looked exactly as it had before, except cleaner. He had wiped down the exterior, removing centuries of accumulated grime. Okay, he said, stepping back. Moment of truth. Your Majesty, try activating the shield. Queenie Sareth stood perfectly still for a moment. Then Danny saw her eyes unfocus slightly, the way someone looked when accessing an internal interface. The armor began to glow. Light spread across its surface like sunrise, building from a soft gleam to a brilliant radiance. The shield flickered once, twice, then stabilized into a shimmering field that surrounded the Queen in a perfect sphere of protective energy. The chamber erupted in gasps and clicks and various alien expressions of amazement. The shield was brighter than it had been before, more stable, humming with contained power that made the air vibrate. Queen Isareth looked down at her hands, at the energy field surrounding them. She made a gesture, and the shield contracted inward, forming a second skin over the armor. Another gesture, and it expanded outward, filling a space 20 feet across. It responds faster, she said, wonder in her voice. The transition between configurations is instantaneous. I had thought the delay was part of the design, but it was degradation. All these years I have been fighting with armor that was slowly failing, and I never knew. She deactivated the shield and the light faded. She looked at Danny and her multifaceted eyes were gleaming. You have returned to me something I did not know I had lost. Danny wiped sweat from his forehead and allowed himself a small smile. Just doing my job, Your Majesty. The priest stepped forward, his body language stiff. For a moment, Danny thought he was about to protest, to claim sacrilege or demand punishment anyway. But instead, the Holy One surprised everyone. The human speaks truth, the priest said slowly. We have been priests when we should have been engineers. We have prayed when we should have learned. This is not blasphemy. This is revelation. He bowed to Danny, a gesture of respect that made half the Varanthi in the chamber gasp. Teach us. The peace treaty was signed 3 hours later, with Queen Isareth wearing her fully functional armor and the Krell ambassador looking relieved that war had been avoided. Danny watched from the back of the chamber, still wearing his maintenance jumpsuit, still holding his toolkit. He figured he would slip away once the ceremony was done and get back to his regular job fixing air filters. That plan lasted about 10 minutes. The squat, blue-skinned council mediator found him trying to leave through a service corridor. Engineer Ross, please wait. The council wishes to speak with you. I'm not an engineer, Danny protested. I'm just a maintenance tech. You repaired technology that an entire civilization had declared irreparable. I think we can call you an engineer. The council chamber had emptied of most delegates, but a small group remained. Queen Isareth was there, along with the priest and several Varanthi engineers. But there were also representatives from other species, all looking at Danny with expressions he couldn't quite read. A tall, thin alien with gray skin and too many joints in its limbs spoke first. Its translator rendered the voices feminine and tired. Engineer Ross, I am Mediator Pearl of the Kasiri Federation. I must confess that what you did today has caused considerable distress among my people. Danny's stomach sank. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone. You misunderstand. The distress is not directed at you. Pearl gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a massive space station, easily 10 times larger than the one they were currently on. This is Primary Station 7, the oldest Kasiri installation. It has been providing power to our homeworld for 3,000 years. The image zoomed in, showing sections of the station flickering and dark. 2 months ago it began to fail. Our engineers have tried everything they know. They have performed every ritual, followed every procedure passed down from our ancestors. The station continues to degrade. We estimate complete failure within 6 months. Another alien stepped forward, this one covered in crystalline plates that chimed softly when it moved. The Dreth Collective faces a similar crisis. Our generation ships, the vessels that carried our people across the galaxy, are showing signs of failure. We have dozens of them, each one housing millions of citizens. They were supposed to function forever. A third voice, this one raspy and deep. The Pelin Union has lost 3 orbital habitats in the past year. Catastrophic system failures we could not predict or prevent. Pearl turned back to Danny. When we saw you repair the Varanthi armor by treating it as a machine rather than a divine artifact, we realized something disturbing. Many of us have inherited technology we no longer understand. We maintain it through ritual and tradition, not through actual knowledge. The council mediator spoke up. This morning I sent out a confidential survey to all member species. I asked one simple question. Do you have critical infrastructure that you maintain but do not fully understand? 41 species responded. 37 answered yes. Danny felt dizzy. 37? Out of 41? The other 4 were humanity and 3 species younger than yours, the mediator confirmed. Every established galactic civilization is coasting on inherited technology. We have become caretakers of machines we treat as magic. Queen Isareth spoke, her voice measured. For 10,000 years, my people believed the armor was sustained by faith. We were wrong. For 3,000 years, the Kasiri have believed their power station is sustained by proper ritual. I suspect they are also wrong. Mediator Pearl nodded slowly. We have reviewed the diagnostic data you made public during the repair. Our engineers believe the same principles that failed the armor are affecting our station. Degradation over centuries mistaken for design features. Maintenance requirements ignored because the equipment was considered sacred. But surely you have engineers, Danny said. People who study technology. We have technicians who follow procedures, Pearl replied. We have priests who perform rituals. But we have no one who truly understands the underlying principles. That knowledge was lost generations ago, when our ancestors decided their creations were too perfect to require such mundane understanding. The crystalline alien chimed in agreement. Our generation ships were built by the founders, the greatest minds our species ever produced. We were taught to revere them, not to emulate them. We became custodians instead of engineers. Danny set down his toolkit and ran his hands through his hair. This was so much bigger than one broken armor. Okay, let me think. If this is a galaxy-wide problem, you need a galaxy-wide solution. You need to start training actual engineers again, people who understand principles instead of just following procedures. That will take decades, the raspy-voiced alien said. My people do not have decades. We have months before our habitats fail. Then you need emergency repairs right now and long-term education for later. Danny looked at the hologram of the Kasiri station. Can you send me the technical data on that station? Whatever documentation you have, whatever sensor readings, everything. Mediator Pearl's skin shifted to a lighter blue. You would examine it? I can try. I can't promise anything, but I can look. Danny pulled out his tablet. If the problem is similar to the armor, it might be fixable. If it's something else, maybe I can at least figure out what's wrong. The data arrived on his tablet in seconds. Danny scrolled through it, frowning. Most of it was in formats he didn't recognize, written in technical languages he had never seen. But the sensor readings, those were universal. Energy signatures, thermal data, efficiency ratings. Those told stories in any language. This looks bad, he said after a few minutes, but not unfixable. You've got similar degradation patterns to the armor. Clogged coolant systems, corroded connections, worn components. It's worse because it's bigger and older, but the principle is the same. Can you repair it? Pearl asked. Maybe. I'd need to see it in person and I'd need help. This isn't a one-person job. Queen Iserith stepped forward. Then you will have help. I am ordering 6 of my finest engineers to accompany you. They have learned more in one day watching you work than in years of temple study. They will assist you. The priest, who had been quiet until now, added his voice. And I will come as well. I must understand what we have forgotten if I am to teach others to remember. Mediator Pearl bowed her head. The Kasiri Federation would be deeply grateful. We will provide transportation and any resources you require. Danny looked around at the assembled aliens, all watching him with hope in their eyes or eye equivalents. I'm just a maintenance tech. I fix things on a space station. I'm not qualified to save civilizations. You repaired something we thought was impossible, Queen Iserith said. You did it not through magic or prayer, but through understanding and skill. That is precisely the qualification we need. The council mediator approached Danny, multiple arms moving in what might have been a gesture of respect. Engineer Ross, the Galactic Council would like to make an official request. Would you be willing to serve as a technical consultant, traveling to species in crisis and helping them address failures in critical infrastructure? While simultaneously, Pearl added, teaching their engineers how to truly understand their own technology? Danny thought about his small apartment on the station, his routine of fixing air filters and recycling systems, the comfortable predictability of his life. Then he thought about millions of people living on failing habitats, about the Kasiri homeworld going dark when their power station died, about all the inherited wonders of the galaxy crumbling because nobody remembered how to maintain them. I'll do it, he said, but I have conditions. Name them, the mediator said immediately. First, everything I learn, I share. No secrets, no proprietary knowledge. If I figure out how something works, everyone gets to know. Agreed. Second, every species that asks for help has to commit to training their own people. I'll fix your immediate problems, but you have to fix the long-term problem of not understanding your own stuff. Agreed. Third, I'm going to make mistakes. Ancient alien technology is complicated. Sometimes I won't know what I'm doing. People need to understand that going in, Queen Isareth made a sound that might have been laughter. Engineer Ross, you admitted you might fail before repairing my armor. That honesty is worth more than false confidence. Agreed. The mediator extended one of its many hands toward Danny. Then we have an accord. The Galactic Council officially retains you as Chief Technical Consultant for Infrastructure Recovery. May your curious hands help us remember what we have forgotten. Danny shook the offered hand, feeling the strange texture of alien skin against his palm. When do we start? Immediately, Mediator Pearl said. The transport to the Kasiri homeworld is ready when you are. Danny picked up his toolkit, the same battered case he had been carrying for 3 years. I guess I should pack more than one jumpsuit. As he left the chamber, escorted by Varanthi engineers eager to learn and a priest determined to understand, Danny realized his life had just gotten a lot more complicated. But somewhere out there, a power station was dying, habitats were failing, and generation ships were running on borrowed time. And Danny Ross, maintenance tech from Earth, was apparently the guy who was going to fix them. He smiled. At least he wouldn't be bored. The Kasiri homeworld looked like a blue-green marble from orbit, beautiful and fragile. The massive power station that kept it alive hung in space like a metal flower. Its petals spread to catch stellar radiation and convert it to energy. From a distance, it looked majestic. Up close, Danny could see it was dying. The transport ship docked with the station's main hub, and Danny stepped out into corridors that hummed with barely contained power. The Varanthi engineers followed him, along with the priest whose name Danny had learned was Keeper Thel. Mediator Pearl met them at the airlock, her blue skin darker than before with worry. The situation has worsened since we called you, she said without preamble. We are now experiencing cascading failures in Sector 9. If they spread to the primary conduits, we will lose all power to the planetary surface within days. Show me, Danny said. They took a transit pod deep into the station's core, passing through sections that grew progressively darker and colder. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Kasiri technicians worked frantically at control panels, their movements quick with panic. The central power chamber was enormous, larger than any space Danny had ever been in. Crystalline structures rose from floor to ceiling like frozen lightning, each one pulsing with barely visible energy. Or at least they should have been pulsing. Many were dark. Others flickered weakly. Danny set down his toolkit and just stared for a moment. This is incredible. How old is this station? 3,217 years, Pearl said. Built by the founder engineers during the Age of Expansion. No one alive today understands how it works. We only know how to keep it running. Or we thought we did. One of the Varanthi engineers, a young female named Saris, was already scanning the crystals with her equipment. The degradation pattern is similar to the armor. Power distribution networks breaking down, connections failing, systems unable to compensate. Danny pulled out his own scanner and began taking readings. These crystals are power conduits. They draw energy from the stellar collectors and distribute it to the planet below. But look at these fracture lines. They're spreading. We have performed every maintenance ritual, a Kasiri technician said, his voice desperate. Every prayer, every offering, every procedure in the sacred texts. Nothing works. Danny walked closer to the nearest crystal, examining it carefully. Can I touch this? The technician looked horrified. Touch it? No one has touched the conduits in living memory. They are too sacred, too dangerous, and they're also breaking, Danny pointed out. If I'm going to fix them, I need to understand them. Can I touch it or not? Pearl gestured her approval. Do what you must. Danny placed his hand on the crystal surface. It was warm, almost hot, and he could feel a faint vibration running through it. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation. It's under stress. Physical stress, not just electrical. The crystal lattice is being pulled apart. He opened his eyes and looked up, following the crystal's length toward the ceiling. These crystals are anchored at both ends, right? Top and bottom. Yes, the technician confirmed. The anchoring system has never been touched. It is part of the original design. When's the last time someone checked the anchors, physically looked at them? Silence. Finally, Pearl spoke. Never. The anchors are sealed in the station's superstructure. To access them would require cutting through walls that are considered part of the sacred architecture. Danny looked at Keeper Thel. Does this sound familiar? The Varanthi priest's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, like an armor that was too holy to open for maintenance. Yes, I see the pattern. We need to see those anchors, Danny said. If my guess is right, the station has been expanding and contracting with temperature changes for 3,000 years. The anchors have been holding these crystals in place, but they're probably worn. The crystals are pulling against damaged mounts, and that's causing the stress fractures. But to cut into the superstructure, the Kasiri technician protested, that would be desecration. What's more desecrating? Danny asked quietly. Cutting into some walls or letting your entire civilization die in the dark? Pearl made a decision. Cut the walls. Do whatever is necessary. It took 4 hours to access the first anchor point, cutting through layers of metal and composite materials with high-energy torches. When they finally broke through, Danny aimed a light into the opening and swore under his breath. That's what I was afraid of. The anchor was a complex mechanical system designed to hold the crystal in place while allowing for minor movement. It should have been gleaming and solid. Instead, it was corroded almost to nothing, held together more by momentum than actual structural integrity. Danny took images and measurements, comparing them to what an intact anchor should look like. This is original equipment. It's lasted 3,000 years, which is incredible. But it's done. These anchors need to be replaced. We do not have replacement anchors, Pearl said. The manufacturing techniques were lost long ago. Then we make new ones. Danny pulled up the images on his tablet and started sketching. The design is actually pretty straightforward. It's just precision metalwork. Any decent machine shop should be able to fabricate these. Saris looked over his shoulder. You can read the design just by looking at the broken pieces. Engineering is engineering. This is basically a fancy bracket with some shock absorption built in. The original designers used materials I can't replicate. But I can make something that works on the same principle with modern materials. He sent the designs to the station's fabrication facilities, then turned his attention to the crystals themselves. While we wait for the new anchors, let's check what else is wrong. What they found was a catalog of slow-motion disaster. Coolant systems hadn't been flushed in centuries. Power regulators were running far outside their original specifications. Backup systems had failed decades ago, and no one had noticed because they hadn't been tested. You've been running this station on borrowed time, Danny explained to the gathered Kasiri technicians. Every system has been compensating for every other system's failures. But you can only do that for so long before the whole thing crashes. A senior Kasiri technician, his face lined with age and worry, spoke up. We followed the procedures exactly as they were written. How did we miss all of this? Your procedures were written for routine operation, not for repair, Danny said. Somewhere along the line, the diagnostic procedures got lost. You were checking that things were running, but not checking why they were running poorly. Over the next 3 days, Danny and his team worked around the clock. They replaced anchors, cleaned coolant systems, repaired connections, and recalibrated power distribution networks. The Kasiri technicians watched everything, asking questions, taking notes, starting to understand their own station for the first time in generations. Keeper Thel observed it all with his multifaceted eyes, occasionally offering insights from the Varanthi experience. We made the same mistakes, he said to one Kasiri technician. We confused reverence with understanding. We thought keeping something sacred meant not touching it, when true reverence means caring for it properly. The Varanthi engineers were invaluable. They had learned quickly during the armor repair, and now they applied those lessons to a much larger system. Saris proved particularly talented, developing an intuitive understanding of how the different systems interconnected. You think like an engineer, Danny told her during a break. I was trained as a priest, she replied. But watching you work on the armor, I realized what I was missing. Prayers are beautiful, but they do not flow through circuits. Understanding flows through circuits. By the 4th day, they had replaced all the critical components and were running system tests. Danny stood in the central power chamber, watching as the crystals began to glow with renewed strength. One by one, the dark sections came back online, light spreading through the station like dawn breaking. Mediator Pearl stood beside him, her skin shifting through several shades of blue. It is working, so far, Danny said cautiously. But this is just emergency repairs. You need a complete overhaul of your maintenance procedures. You need to train people who actually understand this station, not just technicians who follow instructions. We know, Pearl said. You have shown us our blindness. Now we must learn to see again. The station's successful repair spread across the galactic networks faster than light. Within days, Danny was receiving requests from dozens of species, all facing similar crises. The Dreth Collective wanted him to examine their generation ships. The Pellin Union needed help with their orbital habitats. Even small species he had never heard of were reaching out, admitting they had infrastructure they no longer understood. Queen Isareth arrived on the Kasiri homeworld to see the restored station, and she brought news. The Galactic Council has approved funding for what they are calling the Institute of Recovered Knowledge. It will be dedicated to rediscovering lost technical understanding and teaching new generations of true engineers. That's good, Danny said, but it's going to take years to train people. Which is why you will be busy in the meantime, the Queen replied. Every species that has asked for your help is willing to wait their turn, but they are hoping your turn comes soon. Danny looked at his small team, 6 Varanthi engineers, 1 Varanthi priest, and himself. We're going to need more people. Then we will train more people, Sarah said. I have learned from watching you. I can teach others what I have learned. We all can, Keeper Thel nodded. The Institute will need instructors. Those of us who have witnessed the rediscovery of knowledge should share that knowledge with others. And so the student becomes the teacher, Queen Isareth said with approval. This is how civilizations truly advance. Danny spent 2 more weeks on the Kasiri homeworld, not repairing equipment, but teaching. He held workshops for technicians, showing them how to diagnose problems instead of just following procedures. He taught them to question assumptions, to understand principles, to think like engineers instead of priests. The most profound moment came during a public lecture. An elderly Kasiri technician, his career spent maintaining equipment he didn't understand, stood up and spoke. I have been a technician for 60 years. I thought I was serving my people by following the sacred procedures perfectly. Now I realize I was failing them by never questioning those procedures. I have been blind while believing I could see. Danny shook his head. You weren't blind. You were working with the knowledge you had. Nobody taught you to question because nobody around you knew how to question. That's not your fault. But now you know better, so now you can do better. The technician sat down, and several others rose to thank Danny for giving them permission to learn. That's when Danny realized the real problem hadn't been lack of knowledge. It had been lack of permission to seek knowledge. The religious reverence for ancient technology had made curiosity itself seem like sacrilege. As Danny's transport prepared to depart for the Dreth Collective's territory, Mediator Pearl presented him with an unexpected gift, a medal from the Kasiri Federation, inscribed with words in their language. What does it say? Danny asked. He who remembers what we have forgotten, Pearl translated. Wear it with pride, Engineer Ross. You have saved my world. Danny looked at the medal, a simple piece of metal with alien writing. It felt heavier than it should have. I just fixed some equipment. You did more than that, Queen Isareth said. You reminded us that our ancestors were people, not gods. They were brilliant people who built brilliant things, but they were still people. And people, even brilliant ones, build things that need maintenance. As the transport pulled away from the Kasiri station, now glowing bright and strong, Danny looked back at what they had accomplished. 1 crisis resolved, dozens more waiting. But now there were others who could help, others who were learning to see their technology clearly instead of through the fog of religious awe. It was a start. 2 years passed faster than Danny expected. He traveled from system to system, fixing critical infrastructure that had been neglected for centuries or millennia. Generation ships, orbital habitats, planetary defense grids, atmospheric processors, water purification networks, and dozens of other systems that entire civilizations depended on without understanding. Each repair was different, but the underlying problem was always the same. Ancient knowledge treated as magic instead of engineering. The team grew. What started as Danny and 6 Varanthi engineers became a fleet of repair specialists from 24 species. They called themselves the Recovery Corps, and they were always busy. But more importantly, everywhere they went, they taught. Local technicians learned to maintain their own systems. Engineers remembered how to diagnose instead of just following procedures. A new generation discovered that asking why wasn't sacrilege. The Institute of Recovered Knowledge opened on a neutral station near the Galactic Core. It accepted students from any species willing to learn. The curriculum focused on fundamental principles rather than rote memorization, on understanding rather than ritual. Keeper Thel taught there part-time, his lectures on the sacred nature of maintenance always packed with students. Danny found himself back at the original orbital station more often than he expected. It had become his home base between missions, a place to rest and resupply before the next crisis. The station administrators had given him a nicer apartment, but he mostly used it to store equipment. He spent more time in transit than anywhere else. On this particular day, he was in his old maintenance shaft, fixing an air filter that had started rattling again. Some things never changed. He was tightening the last bolt when his communicator buzzed. "Ross here." Queen Isareth's voice came through, formal as always, but with warmth underneath. "Engineer Ross, I hope I am not interrupting. Just finishing up some routine maintenance. What can I do for you?" "I am calling with a request, but also with news. The Varanthi Empire would like to officially honor you with the title of Master Engineer, the highest technical rank in our society. The ceremony would be held on our homeworld." Danny sat back on his heels, surprised. "That's generous, but I'm not Varanthi." "The title has never been given to an outsider before," the Queen agreed, "which is precisely why it is appropriate now. You have taught us that knowledge should be shared across boundaries. Your work has saved countless lives and restored lost understanding across the galaxy. We wish to honor that. When's the ceremony?" "That is the other reason for my call. We would like to hold it at the same time as a broader event. The Galactic Council is organizing what they are calling the Festival of Rediscovery. It will celebrate the progress made in recovering technical knowledge and honor those who have contributed. Many species will be represented. It seems fitting that you should be recognized there." Danny smiled. "Sounds fancy. Do I have to wear something other than my jumpsuit?" "That is entirely up to you, though I suspect appearing in your work clothes would send a message about the dignity of practical labor." The Festival of Rediscovery took place on the same council station where Danny had first repaired the armor. The main chamber had been transformed, filled with displays showing recovered technology, successful repairs, and new training programs. Students from the Institute demonstrated their understanding of various systems. Technicians shared stories of rediscovering their own heritage. Danny walked through the crowd, recognizing faces from dozens of worlds. There was Mediator Pearl, her skin bright blue with happiness. The Kasiri station was running better than ever, and 3 more power stations had been successfully rehabilitated using the techniques Danny had taught. Cirrus was there with a group of her students, all wearing the distinctive patches of the Institute's teaching staff. The crystalline Dreth representative found Danny near a display of Generation ship schematics. "Engineer Ross, I wanted to thank you personally. Our fleet is secure for another 1,000 years, and my people understand their own ships again. My grandson is studying at the Institute. He wants to be a maintenance engineer, not a ship priest. I never thought I would see such a thing. How do you feel about that?" Danny asked. The Dreth chimed softly, a sound Danny had learned to interpret as contentment. "Proud. The founders built the ships for our people to use and understand, not to worship from a distance. My grandson honors them better than I ever did." The official ceremony took place in the evening, with representatives from every member species present. Danny stood on the same platform where Queen Isareth had once stood in failing armor. Now she stood beside him, her armor gleaming and perfect, its shield cycling through various configurations with flawless precision. The council mediator spoke first, recounting the moment 2 years ago when a maintenance tech had dropped from a ceiling shaft and changed the course of galactic history. The story had been told so many times it was becoming legend, but Danny still felt embarrassed hearing it from official sources. Various species presented honors and titles. The Kasiri Federation made him an honorary citizen. The Dreth Collective commissioned a crystalline statue in his likeness, which was simultaneously touching and horrifying. The Pelin Union wanted to name a moon after him, which he politely declined. Queen Isareth presented the Master Engineer insignia herself, a small pin that would allow Danny to access any Varanthi facility and request any resources needed for technical work. "You taught us to honor knowledge," she said. "This is our way of honoring the one who taught us." But the moment Danny remembered most came after the official ceremony, when the speeches were done and people were mingling. A young Kasiri technician approached him nervously, holding a battered toolkit that looked remarkably similar to Danny's own. "Engineer Ross, I wanted to show you something. I built this toolkit myself, using the principles you taught. See, I have diagnostic sensors here and repair tools here, and this section is for improvisation, because you said engineering is as much about adapting as about knowing. Danny examined the toolkit, genuinely impressed. This is really well organized. Better than mine, honestly. You built all of this? Yes, sir. I am part of the first graduating class from the Institute. I have been assigned to maintain the power station you repaired. I wanted you to know that I understand it now. Not just the procedures, but why the procedures work. I can diagnose problems and fix them, not just report them and hope. That's exactly what I was hoping for, Danny said. What's your name? Talus, sir. Well, Talus, you're going to do great. Just remember, when something breaks and everything breaks eventually, stay calm and think it through. The answers are usually simpler than they seem. Yes, sir. And Engineer Ross? Thank you. You gave me permission to be curious. After Talus left, Danny stood for a moment watching the festival crowd. He saw technicians from different species comparing notes, engineers debating design principles, teachers discussing curriculum, all of them learning, questioning, understanding. Keeper Thel approached, moving more slowly than he had 2 years ago. You look contemplative, Engineer Ross. I was just thinking about how much has changed. 2 years ago, I was fixing air filters and thinking about what to have for dinner. Now I'm traveling the galaxy and apparently changing civilizations. Do you regret it? Danny considered the question. No, but sometimes I miss the simplicity. There's something satisfying about fixing a rattling air filter. Problem identified, solution applied, problem solved, clean and simple. And yet you continue with the complicated problems, because they need solving, and because now there are people like Talus who can handle the simple problems. A few more years, and there will be enough trained engineers that I can go back to my air filters. Do you truly believe you will return to such simple work? Danny smiled. Probably not, but it's nice to think about sometimes. They stood together, watching the celebration. Finally, Keeper Thel spoke again. I wanted to tell you something. The holy texts of my people are being revised. We are adding a new section about the sacred duty of understanding. Future generations of Voranthi will be taught that true reverence for our ancestors comes from learning what they knew, not from worshiping what they built. That's a big change. You inspired a big change. You showed us that asking questions is not blasphemy, that taking something apart to understand it is not desecration, that maintenance is a form of devotion. The priest paused. In our new texts, there's a passage that reads, "The greatest respect we can show to the builders is to become builders ourselves." I like that, Danny said. I thought you might. It was inspired by something you said during the armor repair. You honored our ancestors by understanding their genius, not by treating their work as magic. The festival continued late into the night. Danny eventually found himself back in his apartment, exhausted but content. His communicator showed dozens of new requests for assistance, failing systems, degrading infrastructure, species that had heard about the recovery corps and wanted help. He scrolled through them, prioritizing by urgency. A water purification network on a colony world needed immediate attention. An atmospheric processor was showing signs of critical failure. A communications relay that connected 3 dozen systems was operating at reduced capacity. All problems that could be solved. All systems that could be repaired. All knowledge that could be recovered. Danny set his communicator aside and looked at his battered toolkit. The same case he had carried for years, now covered with marks and scratches from 100 different repairs on 100 different worlds. He had replaced most of the tools inside at least once, upgraded his diagnostic equipment, added new items as he encountered new challenges. But it was still fundamentally the same toolkit, the same principles: power, distribution, function, control. Whether it was a 10,000-year-old Voranthi armor or a brand new human air filter, engineering was engineering. Someone knocked on his apartment door. Danny opened it to find Sarah standing there with 3 other Voranthi engineers, all looking excited. Engineer Ross, we apologize for the late visit, but we wanted to discuss the atmospheric processor situation. We have analyzed the data, and we believe we can handle the repair without your direct involvement. We wanted your approval before proceeding." Danny felt a surge of pride. "You don't need my approval. You're trained engineers. If you think you can handle it, then handle it. But what if we encounter problems we cannot solve? Then you figure it out. That's what engineers do. We improvise, adapt, and solve problems. You've watched me work enough times. Now it's your turn to work while others watch and learn." Saris's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "We will not disappoint you." "You couldn't disappoint me," Danny said. "You're already doing exactly what I hoped you would do, taking what you learned and teaching others. That's how knowledge spreads. That's how civilizations remember instead of forgetting." After they left, Danny returned to his communicator and moved the atmospheric processor request to a lower priority. Saris and her team would handle it. More than that, they would teach the local technicians how to handle future problems themselves. That was the real victory, Danny thought. Not the repairs he had made, but the engineers he had trained who would make their own repairs. Not the systems he had restored, but the understanding he had helped to recover. He thought about the young Kasiri technician with the homemade toolkit, about the Dreth who was proud of his engineer grandson, about Keeper Thel teaching at the Institute, about Queen Isareth wearing armor she now understood completely. The galaxy was remembering how to fix itself. Danny opened a new file on his tablet and began writing a maintenance manual, documenting everything he had learned over the past 2 years. When it was complete, he would publish it freely across the galactic networks. Every technique, every principle, every improvisation that had worked, because knowledge was meant to be shared, because the best way to honor the engineers of the past was to teach the engineers of the future, because somewhere out there, someone's toolkit was probably rattling and they deserved to know how to fix it. The next morning, Danny received a message from the Council Station's maintenance department. The air filter in Section 7 was rattling again. Could he take a look when he had time? He smiled, grabbed his toolkit, and headed for the maintenance shaft. Some things, thankfully, never changed. Before saving the galaxy, a maintenance tech had to keep the air filters running. It was good to be home.